it turns out that my nervous system was picking up and being triggered all of the time. And that came a lot from me disassociating from the body. So when you disassociate from the body, you're not in the body. So, well, I wasn't in the body. I disassociated from it, disconnected from the body. So when I was not in my body, so the nervous system really was running the show. And it was running the show all the time. But the more I got into my body, the more I had the senses of what is going on, because your nervous system doesn't know if there's a bear on the street or not. It doesn't
Yeah.
know the story. But it's just like, even somebody would shout on the street, boom, I was activated. And within that activation, I needed to get out. I needed to get home, get into the car park, get into my car and drive home. I don't even know how some days I did drive home, because I would be so panicky. My hands would be gripping the steering wheel, and all I would think of is about getting home. But one of the best things that I've really, I suppose, spent the last 18 months on is noticing that I have feelings in the body, sensations, that I have a body, and it does have feelings, it does have emotions, it does sense. So this has really allowed me to connect more with my body and be more in my body. So something that I heard recently, where somebody had said, if you're not recognizing that you have feelings, like, you're going to always have that disconnection from the body.
Welcome to the Shift Your Vibe to Thrive podcast. My name is Emily Evans Russell, and I'm a single mom, multiple six-figure business owner, and master mindset and energy coach. I created this podcast with two main targets. One, to give you practical tools so that no matter where you are in your life right now, you not only know that things can shift, but you know how to make them greater. And two, to change your frequency so that you become an energetic match for everything you desire. I'm talking your relationships, your finances, your success, all of it. Think of this podcast as your weekly energetic upgrade with a mix of subconscious mind hacks, ways to quantum leap, and consciousness shifts. A place where you learn to sculpt your reality and actually finally truly have the magical life you deserve, and one that works for uniquely you. Are you ready to uplevel your reality? I think I hear yes, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for being here. And now let's go to the show. I want to start, Miss Sue, with asking you about where you are in your life right now and some recent choices you've made to change directions and add new things in your life at this point. Tell us about, since the podcast is, I've had so many different people on, and it's really about shifting something in your life and what made you choose that. What were you looking at? Where are you now? So talk to me about you and kind of what's been up.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, and thanks for asking me these questions, because I love to chat. So I'd say it was probably about a year and a half ago, and I had been like doing this work for about maybe 12, 13 years within a company, the like this brand, this work that I had been doing, and I loved it. I mean, I loved it. I had gotten to certain parts of myself that I was really excited about, and then there was certain places that I was like, the anxiety was still there all of the time. I wasn't relaxed. During that, about that time, about 18 months ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD as well. And a guy that he's my kinesiologist, he's wonderful. And he was like super surprised. He was like, "You didn't know that?" And I was like, "No." But anyway, we just talked about it. And he didn't like label me or anything like that, but we did talk about it. And then there was this, somebody had sent me something about this thing called the heart of cacao. And I didn't know what it was about. I also had this thing in my world where I was like, no, I'm not into anything that is anything going to be like drugs or anything like that. It was a big no. But of course, anyway, I discovered that this was a cacao drink. It was a whole day, and there was yoga involved in it. There was journaling. The two ladies that were running it were both psychotherapists, breath work. They were like women's circle facilitators. And the minute I heard women's circle facilitators, I was like, I'm going to this. So I went to this day, and it was in West Cork, which I love. West Cork, it's a beautiful part of Ireland, and went to the workshop. It was on for the day, brought my notebook and everything. And the whole day, it was called the heart of cacao, which I actually had noticed that I had not been functioning from my heart for a very long time. And even as I say that, my whole body lights up and I get this little sweat as I say it. But it's really an indication and a signal that I'm now functioning from my heart. I had become living up in my head all of the time, trying to work things out, trying to outdo myself. And it really was outdoing. I was constantly on the go and constantly on the go, but getting nowhere. But like really just like constantly, like I was running all the time. And during that day, I had discovered that the whole group that had gotten together, all these women, we all had something very much in common, and it was that grief. And I had never looked at it. I had many deaths in this life with from a very young age. My father died when I was 10. My nephew just passed away 3 months ago. And all of these things, I was one of these people that was like, sure, death is grand, because I experienced it at such a young age. And I learned to actually just create my life with this on the side, but I had parked it over here on the side. But I actually thought I was okay with it. And during that day, I got to listen to people through the breath work. I really got to access parts in my body that I had been holding this resistance to. And it was emotional, mental, physically in my body. And I noticed that I was holding this grief and I really didn't even know. And during that day, when I left, I came out and I felt such a freedom within my body and a freedom within my head. But I felt so much in my heart. And there was lots of crying and there was lots of laughing. But it was great that I could actually finally allow myself to express this that was here. And my body was, it was actually like beginning to rest. There had been during the day a mention of nervous system, and the nervous system had been in my world for a while. And because the work that I had been doing for so long, there was never really a mention of nervous system during that time. And I always wondered, well, I know we have this in our physical bodies, but I'm just wondering, what is it? Like, what does it do? So, of course, I became really interested in it. Everything, of course, you know this, when you are shining the light on something within you that requires more attention, of course, that frequency starts to pick up, and then other frequencies will come in and they'll match it. And everything that was coming my way was nervous system. And even as I'm talking about it, I'm really excited about it, right? Because I did not know, Emily, that this was the gap. This was the gap that when I dived in here, this is where the connection really came in for me, because I had been functioning on protection my whole life.
And not
And
knowing.
not knowing, it was protection, protection. And it was like I was in like a big room with all these doors, and I would slightly open the doors and then bam, I would shut them again. So it really opened the door for me to see why I hadn't gone any further in certain things when I knew I had that energy to create a business. I had that energy to be, I say successful, but actually it's more empowered in what I'm doing. It's not about success for me. It's really that everything that I'm doing, I'm walking that in health and in wealth. It's just really that energy, that it's just that richness within me. So everything with nervous system. But the key piece was that I had been in protection and avoiding connection. And when you're in protection, that's exactly what shows up. There's no connection. I spotted this lady online and I started to follow her. I actually had been following her already and I didn't even know it. And I started watching her stuff. And every time she would talk to something, I was like, wow, I so can identify with that. There was also in my head a part of me going, but you should know this. Like, you should know this already. So you've been doing this work for a long, long time. I know
Can I
you're ready
ask
to
you
come in.
something
Yeah.
there? Because that
Yeah.
just, when you say that, and you've mentioned this distinction between going from really in your head to your heart and kind of not knowing you were there.
Mm.
So there's a big difference. Can you talk about, I should know this, I've learned this concept, versus when you say heart, what does that mean to you? How is that different than what you had experienced before? Like, how is it well, you're taking in new information, but what is that for you when you say that?
Well, for me, it's like when I'm functioning from the heart, it's an addition. Any information that comes in, it's an addition. When I'm functioning from the head, it's a condition. It becomes that condition where it is just like, I must do it. I must do it. This, I must beat this. I must get on top of this. I must know it. And when I began to actually really function from the heart, anything that was coming my way was coming in with like a flow. And it was like when you're functioning from the heart, your body will let you know when it's ready. Whereas when you're functioning from the head, there is no connection to the body. It's all up here. And I call it the penthouse. This is what I call the head, like when you're stuck in the
Like that.
penthouse. So with my ladies with the nervous system alignment group that I have, what we do is we go, right, we're in the penthouse, let's press the button and let's start going down. And we're in the elevator and we're going down. And we just see where we hit in the body. It's all different floors to the body. So I love that you asked that question because it really even reminds me now of how much in the last 18 months that no matter what shows up, it's not like I have to run to it or run to get there. It's just that rest and relaxation of, okay, it's more stepping into that divine feminine, really. It's when you just know, and it's here, and you don't have to do anything to go and get it. It's already here. And
Wow.
just, yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I would love you to talk about, was that uncomfortable for you to shift from go, 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 which you'd been used to for many years? Because I've been really looking at this in the last year as well. And I didn't even notice how it's been a big switch to really relax and not be going forward towards something always.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that shift has been? Like, was it uncomfortable?
It was uncomfortable and more, I have to say, more of a relief.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of resting. That was probably the most uncomfortable for me. The resting. And I've now taught myself and my body to be able to rest no matter what it is, whether it be watching Netflix, whether it be painting my toenails, whatever it is, or actually just sitting and being there, closing my eyes, keeping my eyes open, and even just listening to my breath. And it's much easier to do that when you are in heart. It's much easier to do that when you are recognizing you have a body, you're coming down into the body. It's much easier to do it. But when I notice that it gets really uncomfortable for me, I know I'm up here. I know I've already began to think and not trust.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking, I'm not trusting.
Wow. Can you say, I want to ask you two things. I'd love you to say more about that when I'm thinking I'm not trusting. Let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to also say this. So for me, when I was younger, I was brought up in a Catholic home where we had religion and mass, and we would pray at certain times during the day. I also cultivated my own relationship with God, and however you want to understand that. I mean, I know there's something there. I just know that.
Yeah.
And I, as a child, always had a trust in that. I never really did a lot of thinking as a child, but as time went on and I became more teenager, adult, feminine, and started more into that, I became more in controlling in the head, operating from my head. So I stopped trusting that I was being taken care of. I stopped trusting that I was being watched, that I was being minded, that we have an earth that can be your God. It can be anything. So I stopped that trust and it all became about self. It all became about me. It all became about me having to become the creator, the producer, the director, the choreographer. I was doing it all. So that's actually a lot of stress, right?
Yeah, it is.
So, and it's hard work. And I suppose maybe when my girls came along, I have two girls and they're 20 now and 17. And when they came along, I tried to do that control. But of course, you have these two beautiful girls that come in, you love them, and there's this unconditional love there. So to work from your head and whilst having that love, that's really difficult to do. So that's where in the last 18 months, I have now gained back that trust again. So there is little or no thinking going on. It's like, I trust that I'm being looked after. I trust that the universe has my back. I trust that God looks after me. And I pray. I pray now as well. I prayed as a kid as well. And that's something that is really beautiful to have in my life. Really beautiful. It's not really from religious, because we are spiritual beings. It is from that spiritual practice. And that really works for me. And I'm really a big believer in, you find something that works for you and do that. Just go with that. That is for you. We're all unique. We're all different. And that's maybe your thing, and do that. Yeah.
It's so beautiful because it's so easy. I was talking with a friend the other day, and she said, the thing is, when you're intelligent, you can pretty much talk your way and logic your way into or out of anything and justify for anything because it's an ability in your head. And with that, like you so beautifully said, the trust, you can almost logically understand what trust might be or what it might be to receive collaboration from God or source or the universe, but it's all up here and it's not actually received in a different way when it's coming from you. You've said it so beautifully. And again, it's more than just explaining in words because it's a very felt sense.
Yeah, it totally is. It's a heartfelt sense. And knowing that, like, every day that I wake up, I really do I hand it over. I hand my life over, and I'm like, okay, God, what do you have planned for me today?
Wow.
Because other than that, I was doing the planning. I was constantly in plan and not getting very far, like really not getting very far, because I was so busy. And when you're so busy like that, you also create this survival stress within the body.
Oh, say more about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that survival stress, yeah, I know, we could be here for hours. That survival stress that gets created in the body, like, if you're so busy, and if we say, for instance, something like an event occurred at 6 years of age, and you learn to create, if you like, your nervous system will have like responses to that event, because what happens is that if something comes in so fast at a certain time of your life, your body doesn't get time to process. So the overwhelm and like everything, then my example that I use, it's like putting paper into a shredding machine, and you put in paper and you feed it and it just shreds. But if you go and catch a whole load of paper and you shove it into the machine, get stuck.
Yep.
Exactly what happens in the body.
Yeah.
We get stuck in an unfinished process. The nervous system will step in to do its job, which it's wonderful. It does its job right as it says on the tin. It will protect you. So your nervous system doesn't know the story beforehand. It only comes in at that point when you actually have decided, this is too much for me. I can't do this. The nervous system will step in, and the responses, the survival responses, will actually be created. So within those survival responses, we create stress, survival stress. And I have one of my teachers, she's a wonderful lady. She gave an example of, she had come to that place in her life where she was really functioning from this rest and digest place, which is the ventral vagal, which is, if a lot of people will know, dorsal. And we have ventral vagal is that really healthy state to live from a no stress place. And she had been coming across this bridge in Canada, in Vancouver. And she said she was driving to the hairdressers, and her body started to do this thing, like, where it felt like a full-blown panic attack. Logically, she couldn't understand it because she had gone through this nervous system work for a long time. She had gotten to a really relaxed space. She couldn't understand it. She pulled over the car and called her partner, who's also a somatic teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And they spoke for 2.5 hours. She was like in the car going through this panic attack for this whole time. And what actually came out of it was that her body had gotten to such a rested state that the survival stress that was stored in the body had a way to come out. And this is how it showed up. So that kind of blew my world. And I was like, okay. Because if you notice that when the survival stress comes up, logically we'll go to, oh, I'm still in that survival response. There's something wrong. What's going on with me? But instead of actually acknowledging that you've created the space within the body for this survival stress to leave.
To just release, to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And this is like a lot of what I've discovered in the last 18 months, that even when I get times where certain things, like I'm doing a lot of assignments at the moment, and I was just sitting back before I came on here and I was like, okay, so I know in my body, I have a lot of rest now. I have a lot of change occurring in my body. It's beautiful. I sleep much better. Sometimes I can sleep for 10 hours now. It's like amazing. I can sit with myself and not be uncomfortable. And now I recognize that even through doing assignments, there was this like, I have to do it fast. Deadline is tomorrow night. And then I was like, hang on a sec. So I knew this was from before. I knew
Wow.
this stress was from before. So I just allowed myself to just drop everything, feet on the floor, and just really allowed myself to come from the penthouse right back down into the body, landed in the solar plexus. I had a little look around, tapping into the feelings, the sensations, what's going on in there, what colors am I picking up on in there? Because I'm really visual and colors really help me. What am I hearing? Tapping into all the senses, getting me more into the body. And then through that, you're shining the light on parts of your body that maybe haven't been tended to in a long time.
Mm.
And once we shine the light alone and the acknowledgement allows the release to occur.
That's so beautiful because like you said, when we're in that survival stress mode, like actually living that all the time, what we don't have access to are things like our creativity and our intuition, not from our like intuition from the body, because those are not priorities when we're in survival mode. When the body's trying to protect us, all those go away because it's doing its job. And I also found this year as I did more nervous system regulation work that also my I just always thought I was a light sleeper. And same thing, all of a sudden I was like, I just went to bed and actually woke up in the morning and slept the whole, this is the first time in my life I'd ever had that. And the difference in that of experiencing the world like that, like I love when you're talking about doing homework and noticing, okay, wait, I'm getting this feeling. I've found that since really doing that work, I simply can't be at my computer for as many hours as I used to be. And my body is just like, nope, rest. We need to do something different, even if it's just sitting and breathing
Mm-hmm.
without. So I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned ADD, ADHD. I am also
Mm-hmm.
very much like that. And so I can fill it with having a lot of things going on at the same time and doing. So how
Mm-hmm.
does that look from like using the capacity of that, but from
Mm-hmm.
this very different space when you're not using it to fill up time and keep going? How does that look differently for you?
Firstly, I want to say, when you talked that, a lot of the ADHD symptoms that I had turned out to be nervous system dysregulation. I still recognize the ADD capacity that I have, which is, and I can handle this really well. My body is really comfortable with it. When I'm speaking with you, and I've learned so many amazing things about this. The things that I can do at the same time that are really easy for me. Like as you're talking and as I'm talking, I have those subtitles on, but I can read them at the same time as you're talking and check out what's going on in your background. I can check out my necklace to see if it's the right way around, but I can hear everything you're saying, everything. And that from this space is so much more ease for me. And to allow myself to actually, number one, acknowledge that I can actually do this allows, instead of seeing it as a wrong or instead of seeing it as a disability, I actually allowed myself to really see how much that I can actually use this ability to make my life more ease. Um, when it comes to even my assignments, I know that me working on my assignments and having a little bit of music in the background really works for me, but I don't need it. And that's something that I really realized. I thought I should have that, but I actually don't need that. but it is nice, but it's a choice from my body. It's a choice always now from my body. And noticing, like, even I still do the thing, like if I'm at home and I'm on my computer and I go and I do the dishwasher and I'll check the washing, and then I'll go and I'll maybe clean my wardrobe, and then I come back because I noticed I do need to take breaks from things. I can't just sit there for 4 hours and focus. And this is about orienting as well with your space. So even I've done a ton of Zooms in, I would say, the last 5 or 6 years, like a ton of them. And I had this thing where I should focus on the screen. And a lot of the work that I do with the coach that I work with, and that other lady that I spoke with earlier, we always, like, through the whole lot of the Zoom, we always orient around the room, taking our eyes away from the screen, checking out the room, having a look around, maybe engaging with something that's nice and soft in your room. And that actually is an addition to the body becoming more rested. And then I find when I go back to the computer again, easy peasy.
Wow, that is such a good tip. And as you mentioned that, like listening to me and hearing my voice and being able to see things on your screen and around the room,
Mm-hmm.
that's such a good example of, like you said, engaging all the senses
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to hold all that information, but be really present in your body rather than it's quite unnatural to
Yeah,
stare in one spot at a screen.
totally.
What were some of, you mentioned the ADHD symptoms that you noticed that actually were nervous system dysregulation?
Oh, I would say that, this kind of like panic, this panicky feeling. I noticed that even when I would walk down the street in town, that was a regular one for me. I would constantly jump. I would constantly, like, have this, I'm in danger. And I actually thought that was one of the symptoms of ADHD, but it turns out that my nervous system was picking up and being triggered all of the time. And that came a lot from me disassociating from the body. So when you disassociate from the body, you're not in the body. So, well, I wasn't in the body. I disassociated from it, disconnected from the body. So when I was not in my body, so the nervous system really was running the show. And it was running the show all the time. But the more I got into my body, the more I had the senses of what is going on, because your nervous system doesn't know if there's a bear on the street or not. It doesn't
Yeah.
know the story. But it's just like, even somebody would shout on the street, boom, I was activated. And within that activation, I needed to get out. I needed to get home, get into the car park, get into my car and drive home. I don't even know how some days I did drive home because I would be so panicky. My hands would be gripping the steering wheel, and all I would think of is about getting home. But one of the best things that I've really, I suppose, spent the last 18 months on is noticing that I have feelings, noticing that I have feelings in the body, sensations, that I have a body, and it does have feelings, it does have emotions, it does sense. So this is something that this has really allowed me to connect more with my body and be more in my body. So it was something that I heard recently where somebody had said, if you're not recognizing that you have feelings, like, you're going to always have that disconnection from the body,
Yeah.
because the body does feel.
I was talking with a friend who does nervous system work, and she's a therapist, and she was saying, yeah, when we don't recognize that, that's part of this gift of being in a body here, that it really does, when you disconnect from that, it takes you offline. So you're
Right.
walking around living offline. And when you reconnect with that, like you said, through your heart and realizing this is this part of being here on earth. That's a great quote from this documentary. It's like, you're at Earth School. Why don't you take the curriculum? It's really
Yeah,
awesome, actually.
totally.
And then that
Totally.
brings you online to experience all of it in such a different way.
Yeah. And what you just said was, you're offline when you're not connected to the body. So therefore you can only live from protection and not connection. So the protection is always the nervous system. So that's how we learn to live then. And that's how I had been living, was in protection. I could have done so many seminars, classes, I could have done tons of stuff. But even at class, I was uncomfortable, even within those. And now I don't. Now I don't have that. Now I'm very comfortable. Like, I did a 16-hour Kundalini activation a couple of weeks ago, And I was so comfortable. I didn't know anybody, was so comfortable to be there. I had been doing this detox, so everybody went out for lunch. I had my food with me, so I sat in the yoga room on my own. I turned the lights down and I ate my food. And it was super comfortable for me. That wouldn't have been something that I would have allowed myself to do before because I was functioning more from protection.
Wow. So can you say more about the connections, like after making this shift and this change over the last 18 months? How has connection with yourself and the people around you changed with this change?
Totally. Oh, so many changes. It's so amazing. The first one, when you said about myself, really that connection with like even my organs, my reproductive system. There had been things showing up in my body that I was like, me and you have talked about this before, where I'm 47 now, and certain things were showing up in the body. And I was like, oh, me? Menopause? No, I'm not having that. And they were showing up in the body, and I was like, okay. And now, since I've created the connection in the body, there is none of that. There
Wow.
is no symptoms showing up in the body. There is no hot flushes. So me actually, and how I work with bodies is listening to bodies. I have this like gift with other bodies, which I didn't have with my own, but now that I have it with my own, my gift has actually grown like so fast with other bodies. And just even being able to hear like the way bodies like gift us information. Now I can hear my ovaries. Now I can hear my womb. Now I can hear my heart. And it's not even like a hearing with my ears. Like it's that innate hearing, that knowing within. And the communication is much clearer. And I'm not saying that connect with the body and all these things go away. It's not even about that. It's actually the curiosity. I began to have curiosity with my body and actually wondered. And it's funny because when I say the word wondered, like the vagus nerve is Latin for the wandering nerve. So it wanders around the body. And so I wander around my body now. It's really like, body, show me. Come on, I'm here. And there is, as I said, those symptoms just they literally just left. But I do believe that my body was calling me. It was calling me for a long time, and it was calling me back in. It was like, hey, can you come in here? Because if we're not connected with the body, we're in protection mode. And what can actually show up in bodies when we're functioning from just protection? There's so much more that we can have from connection. And I did notice, even with my girls, my two girls, the relationship has completely changed, because also for them, if I wasn't connected to my body, there was just this, as you said, this offline. So I couldn't really hold a conversation with them. There was like, I was not there, but yet I was there, but not fully there. Now that I'm fully there, I can actually sit with them and just be with them. And they like to tell us stuff, and I'm interested in what they have to tell me. But it's just being there with them in my relationship. There's just such a space of this. Nobody is expecting anybody to give them anything. We're both in that growth of actually no expectation and just really allowing ourselves to show up to ourselves, you know?
Wow. I love everything you just said. So it's so beautiful. And when you were speaking about your body and these symptoms that could have been like, is this perimenopause or what is this?
Yeah.
He's just giving us a message. Come back. When you mentioned your daughters, I also have two daughters. And last year we went through some of that teen stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, it was just a call, just like your body does, that came from another person, just like your body was like, hey, come here. That's all it was. And I could have made it this big deal about, oh, she's doing this thing or having this. And that's simply all it was. And
Yeah.
now from this, like else, I've been exploring this. You put into words so much. It really is so much just about being there and listening in a very, very different way.
Yeah.
And the joy that I've seen show up from that is so different than what I would have called like having fun before. And of course, we had moments of wonderfulness. But the other night, we went out for dinner, just me and the two girls, and they were telling jokes and we were laughing so hard, like so hard. And my daughter goes, I don't think I remember laughing this hard ever, or definitely in years, like that full body belly where you're just like absolute joy. And it wasn't that it was anything particular, it was a silly joke or something, but everyone was just so there and present that I was like, now that's joy, the simplicity just of like just feeling and being there so much. Yeah.
Totally. And the simplicity is in the joy. And I've noticed like those moments as well. Like myself and my younger daughter, we went away to London recently and we went to see the musical Wicked. And that has been something that we've all wanted to do. So we were on the plane and it's so funny because and I'm now at that space in my life where I can receive from her when there's something where she's like, hey, that doesn't work. And I don't take it personal because I'm not in that survival mode and I can hear her, but I also there is healthy boundaries there, which I had no boundaries, by the way, just saying I had none. But also that comes with living in survival stress as well from where I was leaving, because I was definitely a pleaser, a fawner.
But isn't that interesting? Say more, because one would think when we say I'm living in protection or survival, that you'd actually have a lot of walls up, quote, or boundaries. How is it that it's the opposite?
I think for me, because I was more of a freezer and a fawner, that's what I was more of, which
Will you explain that for people that don't know?
Yes, please. Yeah, I will, of course. So I would say for me, that's more when I experienced, we'd say, certain events in my life that my response from my nervous system when that came in at the time when it was all too much for me, too overwhelming, my body didn't get to process the event. My go-to state of being became where I would be like, I would freeze in certain situations, like if somebody raised their voice too much or they spoke at me in a certain way, but even if they said they were joking, I'd still freeze. That was the response of my nervous system. This is dangerous. The fawning energy is more the pleaser energy, where you don't want to upset the apple cart. So you're aware, your body becomes aware there's something, and your nervous system's like, hey, we need to go into this mode now because this will keep us safe. So then no matter what anybody says, hey, do you want to fly to the moon and go? Yeah, sure, no problem. Let's do that. Do you want to eat this dinner even though you don't like it? Yeah, no bothers. I'm easy. And so when you learn to function from that for a long time, that trauma response for a long time, there is no boundaries. There is no boundaries. So it's a yes when it's a no. And then what shows up, and this is where I was kind of getting a little bit confused, because when I was functioning from that, and to function from freeze and fawn response, there's always that disassociation from the body. So to get back down, so freeze and fawn, top of the chart, we'd say, and we'll put the color red on it. That would be when you're in dorsal vagal. So which means if you think about the word dorsal, sleep, right? Yeah, dorsal back. So you're in that mode, right? And that's where the disassociation, the fawning, the freezing. But to get back into the rest and digest, which is at the lower end, we'll just call that white. To get back into that, which is called the ventral vagal, which is where we have the vagus nerve is stimulated and we're back in that rest and digest, you actually have to go through the fight and flight, the sympathetic, to get back down to there. So sometimes if you notice when you were doing, like for me, when I was doing the pleasing, and I was like, yeah, sure, no bothers, the person would leave and I would be so angry. I would be so angry, so pissed. Who do they think they are? Telling me what to do. This is not okay. I am not having this. And that was how my life was. It was like fawning, fighting, fawning, fighting.
Wow.
And their survival responses. And I can only explain it that way. I'm sure there's many people who are listening to this, they have their own examples, but that was the best way for me to get it. And that's how I understood it for me, was that to get back down. And then eventually after I would be angry, I would just want to sleep, but I would just be more rested then. But that was how it went. That was the cycle. That was the cycle all the time. But I noticed when I was on the plane with my daughter, we were going along and I was like, oh, you must be so excited to be going to Wicked. Like when I was a kid, I would have loved that. I didn't have that. And I was like, it was that fawning energy I was doing again. And she just, she's so clear. She just looked at me and she was like, that's a lot of expectation you're putting on me. I was like, what? I thought I was being nice.
Yeah.
Fawning.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was like, no, seriously. She was like, we're going here on this flight. You asked, could you take me? And I was like, yes, I would love to go. But now she said, you're telling me how grateful I need to be now, or how excited I should be because of this. And it was clear. I mean, and this was on the plane going out. And I was like, okay, we already have a very clear energy going out here. And I actually apologized to her. And I was like, I totally hear where you're coming from. Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of pressure.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's already benefiting from that as well,
Yeah.
being able to actually speak up and call her boundaries. So it's actually something that's really showing up with everyone around me because I'm actually functioning from that frequency.
Wow. That is, and your daughter being so clear on that,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And I know me, I'm very, had that similar pattern that you had, very much fun. And so I noticed that I didn't, if I would think if I had responded in the way your daughter just had,
Uh-huh.
that I would be being so awful, like that it was bad to have some sort of boundary. The whole idea of boundaries was like, why would I want to have those? That seems like, I just, the concept didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah,
And that's such a clear example of she's just very clear.
very clear.
And it's such a gift to interact with someone like that and be very clear with other people what yours are. It's
Yeah.
not a separation, which I think is very different. I really was like, oh, I don't want to separate from people. So therefore I won't have a boundary. But that is, how do you see those as different?
It's very funny because when you said separation for humans, that's not what we came here for. We came here for the oneness. We came here through certain things that we experience, through certain events. We start to function from certain trauma responses. And that can really like create separation.
Mm.
And the more that I got aligned with number one, acknowledging that I had a nervous system, acknowledging that I had trauma response happening in my life. And then I became aligned with my true self, the more that me and her could have this conversation. But she wouldn't have been able to say that to me before because I would have went directly to separation. But I also was functioning from separation from my body. So I was disassociated. So that all comes with that. There's a gap,
Yeah.
the offline thing that you talked about, there's a gap. So the more I became aligned with me and who I truly am, I suppose the more I'm kind of more functioning from that, I say returning to innocence through consciousness. And that's my target. And that's what I ask for every single day. That innocence that we all had and still have within us to become more aligned with that. And that's who we truly are. And to walk in the world as that, every interaction you're going to have is going to have that clarity. And when there's boundaries needed, they're going to be there.
It's so beautiful. How can people find you, to work with you, to talk with you? What are you up to these days?
I have a website. I'm going to give you all that information so that you have it.
We will link it in the
Um,
notes.
yes. It's mostly through my website and mostly through word of mouth. I really love people. I really enjoy people and I'm really interested in people. So I do a lot of like meeting people, interaction, phone and stuff like that. But I have a WhatsApp group where I interact with people there and anyone can join that. I also have a website where anytime that I do anything that comes up, like I do a lot of these, like we're just in the middle of a nervous system alignment one. So it's a
Beautiful.
21 days mornings. The next one that is coming up, I think I have it wrote down. It's the wild woman within.
I love it.
That's the next one. Yeah, at the
So these are online,
www.
so people can join you from
Anywhere. These ones will be
Okay.
online. And then I do this Saturday, I have a workshop with, I don't even know at this stage. It seems to be women is the calling right now. That's what seems, I don't want to separate it out and just say, oh, it's only women, but it just seems to be women that's showing up right now. And there's a workshop on Saturday live in Cork. So it's a full day workshop. We do some body work. And also there'll be talk about nervous system. This one is on the womb. Yeah. So we're going to be doing that one on this Saturday. And yeah, there's loads of things that come up, but I when they ping, I'll go for it. You know? And I do private sessions online as well and in this beautiful healing room every Monday and Thursday. So yeah.
Sue, I could talk with you all day. So maybe I'd love to have you back on.
I'd
And
love it.
thank you so much for you, how eloquently you put this into words and really sharing that shift and everything it's brought to you. And I know to all the people you get to work with, like you said, you love people, and it's really beautiful to see more of that going on. You're such a gift.
Thank you, love. Thank you for having me here.
I hope you got something out of that episode. If you like this podcast, please share it with someone you know who'd find it useful or interesting, and subscribe so that you can listen to past and upcoming shows.